Anatoly Stepanovich Dyatlov was born on March 3, 1931, in the Krasnoyarsk region of Siberia. It was a cold and isolated place where winters lasted half a year, and life was harsh even by Soviet standards. His family were simple workers, poor but proud. His father worked in the forest industry. His mother took care of the children. From a young age, Anatoly was stubborn and intelligent. In school, he excelled in mathematics and physics, anything that required precision and logic. Teachers often said he would one day work in science. He was known as the boy who never gave up, even when everyone else had stopped trying. Post-war years were difficult. Food was scarce, and diseases were common, but Dyatlov had one goal: to escape poverty and become an engineer. In 1950, he entered the Krasnoyarsk Technical Institute, where he studied electrical and nuclear engineering, fields that were still new and secretive at the time. After graduation, he was assigned to a top-secret military program developing nuclear submarines. The Soviet Union was racing to build its first nuclear fleet, and Dyatlov was sent to a testing base in the Far East. There, deep in the frozen waters, he worked with live reactor systems. During one experiment, a serious malfunction occurred. The cooling system failed, causing a radiation leak. Dyatlov received a dangerous dose of radiation that would affect his health for the rest of his life. From that day, he became colder, harder, more disciplined. Years later, he would say, "People fear what they don't understand. I know how nuclear power works, so I don't fear it." After a long recovery, Dyatlov returned to work. In the Soviet system, weakness was not an option. By the late 1970s, he was offered a prestigious new position as deputy chief engineer at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine. Chernobyl was considered a triumph of Soviet science, and the nearby city of Pripyat was called the City of the Future. Modern apartments, young families, theaters, even an amusement park, it was a symbol of progress. Dyatlov and his family moved there in 1973. Workers quickly got to know him. Strict, cold, but extremely competent. His gaze alone could silence a room. Colleagues said he demanded not perfection, but discipline. Despite his difficult personality, Dyatlov was one of the most skilled engineers in the plant. He knew every detail of the RBMK 1000 reactor and often warned that the design had serious flaws, warnings that Moscow ignored. Over time, he became responsible for overseeing tests and maintenance of reactor number 4. It was dangerous work, but he was proud of it. No one could have imagined that this man, Anatoly Dyatlov, would soon stand at the center of the greatest civilian disaster in human history. On the evening of April 25, 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant was preparing for a safety test. It was meant to be routine, to check if the reactor could maintain cooling without external power for a short time. A simple experiment, but a series of wrong decisions turned it into a catastrophe. Anatoly Dyatlov was the deputy chief engineer that night, the man responsible for overseeing the test. He arrived tired but focused. The experiment had already been delayed for hours by orders from Moscow, so the schedule was broken. Dyatlov was under pressure to complete it quickly. Time and hierarchy were against him. The operators were young, many of them inexperienced. They hesitated as the readings on their panels became unstable. Dyatlov pushed them to continue. "Follow the plan," he said. "Everything is under control." But it wasn't. The reactor was unstable. Cooling water had been reduced. Power was dangerously low. When they finally pressed the AZ5 button, the emergency shutdown, the reactor exploded. At exactly 1:23:44 a.m., reactor number 4 blew apart. The blast lifted a 1,200-ton lid into the air. A blue light filled the sky as radiation streamed into the atmosphere. Pripyat, the city of the future, was suddenly staring into hell. Inside the control room, panic broke out. Alarms screamed. Nobody understood what had just happened. Dyatlov stood frozen in disbelief. He couldn't accept that the core had exploded. He insisted it was just a water tank or turbine. When the first firefighters arrived, he was still shouting orders. "The reactor is intact," he said. "Just put out the fire." But it wasn't a fire. It was the reactor itself, open to the night air, releasing deadly radiation. Dyatlov stayed at the plant for hours, coughing and weak but refusing to leave. By morning, he was vomiting and his skin had begun to burn. Still, he kept saying, It's nothing serious. It will pass. Doctors soon realized it was acute radiation poisoning. Dyatlov's exposure was fatal, nearly 390 roentgens. He was transferred to a hospital in Kiev and later to Moscow, where KGB agents made sure he said nothing to the press. Months later, he was brought to trial. The Soviet government needed someone to blame. Dyatlov was accused of gross negligence and violating safety regulations. He was sentenced to 10 years in a labor camp. During the trial, when asked if he accepted guilt, he said, "I followed the instructions exactly. If I am guilty, then the system itself is guilty." That statement became legendary. In prison, his health deteriorated quickly. His organs were damaged, his hair fell out, and his immune system collapsed. In a letter to his family, he wrote, "My job was to protect the plant, and now they say I destroyed it. They don't want the truth. They want a scapegoat." After 3 years, he was released early due to poor health. In 1994, he gave a rare interview, his hands shaking, his voice weak, but his conviction unchanged. "I was never afraid of the reactor," he said. "I was afraid of the people who made decisions without understanding what they were doing." In 1995, Anatoly Dyatlov died from heart failure caused by radiation exposure. Until his last day, he believed he wasn't the villain of Chernobyl, but a man trapped inside a broken system, one that valued obedience more than truth.